Good evening, Prof. Thanks very much for your time. Now, one of the reasons I invited you tonight was because one has a sense that the criminal justice system will get a great deal of focus at this State of the Nation address, but also the rule of law specifically. And one bases that, or as a political journalist, I base that on what the President has said and what the President has promised over the past 18 months. Would that be your sense as well?
Well, certainly. The people want a sense that the rule of law is alive and kicking. Investors also want a sense that the rule of law is alive and kicking. During the years that currently look like were years of state capture, too many people enjoyed impunity, and people would like to know that when the President says impunity is over, it is over. But we don't expect the President to be arresting people or to be interfering with the police, the NPA, the public protector, or anybody else. We just expect the President to get out of the way and provide the necessary resources and support in terms of his public narrative.
In other words, it is the role of state law enforcement agencies to do the actual work. What
Exactly.
the President needs to undo is
Yes.
what some of the people have said have been the capture.
Yes.
Not only in terms of trying to,
Yes.
get money from state-owned enterprises, but also a situation where you actually had the institutions that were supposed to deal with those who break the law captured themselves so that they get to do nothing about the wrongdoers.
Well, there seems to be that evidence if we go according to the evidence that has been given by Mr. Ngosana, for example, before the State Capture Commission. But it wasn't just they captured themselves. Mr. Ngosana suggests that there was interference. That's why it's important that the President gets out of the way. He doesn't help them to do the right thing. They know what is the right thing to do.
Well, we've seen already the appointment,
Yes.
which was speedy, but also open and transparent,
Exactly.
of the National Director of Public Prosecutions. Where else have you seen evidence that indeed the President takes the rule of law very, very seriously?
Well, firstly, he's appointed a very competent National Director of Public Prosecutions, Ms. Batohi, who is not only competent in terms of just being knowledgeable, but somebody who knows the sector. She herself has appointed equally competent people to help her. SARS has a senior person has been appointed there who's competent, who used to be a deputy commissioner there to do the right thing. And we see now that some of the state-owned enterprises are beginning to get the right attention, and would like to see more of that attention translating into competent and upright people.
But do vested interests, because when one looks at, for example, just your own tweets and utterances over the past couple of weeks, you look at how politicians, or certain politicians maybe one should say, interpret or look at the things that you say or write, but you also look at what one would think are ordinary people's responses to the same things. Why would you say, why do so many people have so many different understandings of what should matter? And I'm not talking here about judges,
Yes.
or lawyers,
Yes.
or professors of law, but at a very basic level, if we are indeed as interested in democracy as we are, shouldn't there be a point that we, sort of most of us at least,
Yes.
gravitate towards?
Absolutely, and that's going to be why the President has to be clear about the vision he has for this country, the role for government, the role for business, the role for society, and the role for academia. But why we have differing perspectives, I think in a democracy you are going to get differing perspectives. But I do think that Bell Pottinger did mess up the psyche of the South African public. There are those at this stage who the only thing that matters to them is white monopoly capital. Every time you tweet, even about something very constructive, something that is just even sometimes about Christian ideas, all they can think about is white monopoly capital, because they were peddled, they were gaslighted to only focus on that. And the sad thing is our democracy at that stage is in trouble. And key to that is we need to fix social justice, we need to fix the state, we need to fix the capacity of the state, we also need to fix integrity within the state, we need to fix integrity within business. But more than anything else, we need to start working together, the thing you said initially, that at this stage, all hands should be on deck and all of us should be facing in the same direction in moving this country forward.
And it doesn't mean, of course, we want everyone to have the same interpretation of the law, but at the very least, we need to make sure that whoever takes a decision to go one way or the other, at least that person is informed.
Exactly. For example, if decisions have to be made by people who exercise state power, they have a duty to be lawful, they have a duty to be reasonable, they have a duty to be rational, they have a duty to be just and fair. They can never explain their decisions by saying somebody else has done it, or they can never explain their decisions to say you have no right to ask me questions. If you work for the state, you have signed for answerability, and anybody can ask you questions.
I want to ask you about that interview and that tape that went on for hours. But then it takes me to a role or responsibility that people like you probably have more than others. I would imagine journalists as well, which is to say we can't then leave these legal matters to the courts, who have done a good job over the past few years, but we can't leave it to schools of law either, because only a few of us actually have access to them. What then do we need to do as South Africa to make sure that what has brought us here and hold us out of a situation, or a deeper crisis we could have been in, how do we enhance what the gains of the past few years and make sure that there is a better appreciation and understanding of the importance of the rule of law among South Africans?
Absolutely. Social accountability is the answer as far as I'm concerned, and this is what we promote in the Thuma Foundation, where we get everyone to understand the architecture of the state and the specific architecture of South Africa's constitutional democracy. Who does what? How are they supposed to do it? What values should underpin that? And what are your entitlements as people? And as people understand the architecture of our democracy, of any functional democracy, then they then are able to exercise the responsibility to ask the right questions to the right people. But I'm honestly with you, Voya, about the role of people in a democracy. We often are told that leave politics to politicians. It's not true. Everything is political. Political is civic. And everyone needs to know what are the politics of this country, and everyone should have an opinion. It doesn't mean that we should all be professional politicians. That we should leave to politicians. But the rest of us should be on guard, should be vigilant to keep this democracy going. But we shouldn't just criticize. Civil society should also provide answers to where we should be going. We all should be reading the Constitution. We all should be looking at our economy and economic policies, and we could also provide some suggestions on what will it take to have an economy that is growing, that is inclusive, and that is sustainable.
Prof, that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you very much for your time and for coming through this evening. That was Professor Thuma Mina from the University of Stellenbosch.